Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar covering on-cost estimating and on-point reporting here in ConstructionSuite. My name is Ian, and I'll be taking you through a lot of these products today for the ConstructionSuite software. And we're going to take a look through estimating and reporting in ConstructionSuite today, and hopefully cover any of those questions that you guys might have, and make sure that we can get everything set up to run smoothly for you right out of the gate. To begin with, what all of you should be able to see right now is the main ConstructionSuite interface. This is what we refer to commonly as the today screen, and from here you'll actually see the results of some of our work with a cost breakdown up here at the top portion. A lot of this information right now is filtered down to an estimate, but you can always go through and select all estimates to see how all of your costs are being distributed across your company. We've also got a financial graph, which is going to show us some of the results today from our base estimate and estimated value. Base estimate was kind of synonymous with original contract sum, and the estimated value is going to be plus or minus any change orders that come up over the course of the job. And of course, most of this information as well is pulling in from the estimates that we're creating in the projects, which you can take a look at over here on the left-hand portion under the Projects tab. From here, we can actually see all the different jobs that we have going live at the moment, and each of these jobs, each of these projects is going to have an estimated value over here on the right-hand portion, where you can see the totals or the results from all the estimates that we're putting together. Now, as you click into any of these projects, you'll actually see some of the information showing up as available within the estimates here. And my primary estimate is the icon here indicated with a little green dot. That's how we can always tell which one is our primary. And this is what's going to be feeding the information into the project details over here on the left side, where we can see the base estimate, the estimated value, and so on. As we make adjustments to this primary estimate, it's obviously going to adjust these values here as well. And then, of course, as we start to add in change orders and the like, all of this information is going to get updated accordingly. Now, most of this detail that we're looking at here is also going to be put together into the various different reports that we generate as we go, but it all typically starts with the estimate templates that we can take a look at now. So if we come back over to the navigation portion on the left side, you'll actually see one of the tabs here called Estimating. And if we click on that tab, this is going to take you to the overview page or the dashboard for all of our estimates here in ConstructionSuite. Now, in this dashboard, we can once again see a cost breakdown for all of our estimates, a little change order summary here as well. But it'll also show us the recent estimates that we've been working on. Down here in the lower left-hand corner, some of these are going to be associated with the projects, which we can see out to the right side in the recent projects. Between these two, though, there's also going to be an area where you can take a look at all of the different on-cost estimating templates that are available here within ConstructionSuite as well. Now, on this section, you'll see several different folders here for us to work with, and this is where you'll find a lot of the estimating templates that come with the ConstructionSuite software when you first get it installed. This might include things like light commercial or commercial master templates. We've got residential templates here as well, and remodeling templates also. You'll also find in this area a CSI 16 and 50 division template as well, just in case you want to take a look at any of the Construction Specifications Institute's recommended estimating structure. Now, at any point, you can always just double-click to open up any of these estimates. So if we come back and take a look at the residential estimates, for example, we can double-click on one of these to open up the estimate information and take a look at some of the details. And from here, you'll get a good overview of what's going to be available within the estimates and the estimate templates as well. So just on this project totals page, the opening page for the estimate itself, we get a summary of all the details that are available with all the categories that we've selected in this template. And this summary view, this project totals page, is going to show us our categories like planning, foundation, framing. Each of these is going to be highlighted in the blue line. And then all of the subcategories underneath them as well, like planning housed underneath it design services, permits, lot costs, and construction financing as subcategories. All of this information is going to show up in the name column. And if you click on any of these categories or subcategories, it will also take you to the category sheet for that, which you can also find tabbed down here along the bottom. So once again, planning is one of our categories, and you can see the planning tab down here at the bottom that corresponds to that category. Foundation is next, and you can see the foundation tab down here at the bottom as well, and framing, and so on. Now, again, as you click into any of these categories, you'll actually be taken to that category sheet where you can see an itemized breakdown of all the information that's going to be available within that subcategory. As part of our template, for example, for the residential master, we have a subcategory called site work, which has as items in it clearing, excavation, backfill, and other. Footers has a few items here as well: labor type 1, labor type 2, labor type 3, and so on. And as you go through the list, you'll see some additional detail here as well. Once again, this is going to be in the name column, where you're going to be seeing all the categories, subcategories, and items. And if we step back to the project totals page, you can also look at the right-click menu, where you can go through and add new categories or subcategories. You can move these subcategories around a little bit. You can convert categories into subcategories or vice versa. And you'll also see in this name column, there's an area where you can click a link to add new categories or new subcategories within those categories. So plenty of tools here for you to go through and customize anything that you guys would like to work on. And most of it starts with that right-click menu on the project totals page to make sure that you have all the categories and subcategories that you'd like to work with. Now, a lot of our clients, when they're first getting started, will take a look at this as it correlates to QuickBooks and recognize that there is an option or a possibility to go ahead and set up most of your cost codes in these estimate templates. And the easiest first step to that is to actually come into your category names and just start to put in maybe a little brief numbering system for your categories to match either what's already available in QuickBooks or to create your numbering system so that you can more easily identify things as you're going through QuickBooks. There is a direct correlation here that we'll explore in a little bit more detail tomorrow for the QuickBooks integration webinar. But just to get started, it's usually a good idea to go ahead and consider that as we're putting together our estimate template. Put a couple of numbers out in the front and everything gets sorted the way you like to see it in both programs. Now, of course, the same thing could be true for the subcategories as well. You can always come down to the subcategories, as you'll find in some of these templates, and rename them to include things like maybe 0100 design services or something like that. This is mostly preference, though. If you guys would like to use a numbering system, by all means, I highly recommend it. It's pretty handy most times. If you don't choose to use that, that's okay too. A lot of these templates are very highly used by the tens of thousands of companies that are already using the ConstructionSuite estimating system today. So feel free to touch it up as you need to. And as you explore some of the additional information available here, you can also kind of hone in on some more specifics using this description column, where you can put in some additional notes if you choose to. These description columns, or the notes that you're putting into the description column, will be available in several of the reports that we generate later. But the most useful aspect to this right now, though, is it gives you the ability to use less descript terms for your categories and just add a little bit of custom flavor for each project in the description column, perhaps. As we continue to move out from here, though, you'll find a method of calculation column comes next. This is mostly important as we get into the category sheet. But you'll also see a total price and a percent of total over here on the right as well. The total price is going to be the contract value, or what you're going to be charging your client for this particular section. The percent of total reflects the percentage of the overall contract value that this one line represents. So, for example, if we had $100,000 worth of design services, and that's a lot, I know, but that would represent maybe 100% if we didn't have anything else on this job. As you spread out your costs, you'll watch these percentages lower and so on. Now, at any given time, if you'd like to show some additional information here, you can always right-click on any of the column headers to show hide columns as well. And this just allows you to go through and turn on or off any of the different columns that are available so that you can really pick and choose what's going to be most important to you as you're working through the system. Now, this is going to be a file-specific list of columns available. So if you have some default columns that you want to use every time you open up a new estimate, it's a good idea to go into the estimating template and set these columns so that they're always there and available. Things like the type, which is going to be where you select if it's an estimated cost, an allowance, options perhaps, or once you get into the job, things like change orders will show up in the type as well. Classification is an easy way to let the system know what you're estimating as part of a material cost or a labor cost. Resource is where you assign it to an individual. If it's material, for example, the resource might be the supplier who's providing you with those materials. If it's a subcontractor, that would be the subcontractor is the contact that you'd assign here as well. And again, you can open up a few of these additional columns just in case you'd like to work through this information, and I definitely recommend saving it as part of the template just in case you would like to have these always available. Now, some of these columns will also start to have an effect on the estimate summary over here on the right-hand side as well. For example, if we decide to open up the section where we're looking at the costs by classification, we've got the classification column open now, and as you start to put in your costs, you will see these numbers increasing based on the classification that you've assigned to these. Similarly, with the cost by type, you can see how much money you're spending on your estimated costs versus allowances that you're putting into the system, options, and so on. And you can even get a full category breakdown, which is also going to be represented in this pie graph as you start to put the information together. So this is a good one to keep an eye on because it does a great job of showing you everywhere that you're going to be spending your money. And as you get into the specifics for this as well, you can click into the categories and turn on some of these additional columns to get that information detailed out a little bit more as well. Now there is a difference. Some of you may have just recognized that there's a difference between the category sheets and the project totals page. The project totals page being a summary sheet, it does a great job giving you summarized information, but the detail that you're entering in for all of this information is always going to take place on the category sheet, and therefore it's got some additional columns that are going to be available to you as well, like unit costs, quantities, tax details, and line item markups and things like that as well. When you're taking a look through this section, you can start to make some of the adjustments to things like site work. We might hire a subcontractor for this, so you could always switch this over to a lump sum and save that as part of the template. This would then also change the classification down to subcontractor. And if you have one particular architectural company that you like to use, this is SiteWorks rather. So if you have one company that does all of your site work, you could always come into this and assign that company as your default resource in the template. Now, of course, this might change as you start to get into the job itself, but you can always go through and make these adjustments here. Set up your templates so that they're pretty general for you. Maybe have all the information and the details that you like to have from job to job. And that way, all you have to do is go into and update the quantity and cost columns as you're starting up new jobs. So let's switch at this point from taking a look at templates and some of the things that we can do with the templates and switch over to how we're going to be using some of that information in the jobs as we're setting up estimates. So with that in mind, I'm going to switch over to my Lot 195 Baldwin Park project, and let's open up that primary estimate so that we can take a look at this in just a moment. So again, we're looking at one of the estimates that was built, for those of you who recognize this too, off of the residential master template in ConstructionSuite. And this has the same kind of standard categories and subcategories that I would expect from one of those templates, most of it in the order of construction. But this one has a lot of the pricing information already pre-populated into it, which is handy. As you click into and take a look at any of the categories or subcategories, you'll see where we've actually started to put in some of the pricing information. Let's right-click and open up those columns real quick so that we can actually see this information. And cost, quantity, line item markup, and so on. Now we can see where we're starting to put together all of this pricing information. Most of my quantities in here represent the number of units, of course, that we're going to be purchasing. The cost here is going to represent that unit cost, the cost for purchasing maybe 1 linear foot or per each item that we're going to be buying, or in the case of excavation, maybe cubic feet or something like that. I've also turned on some of the additional columns here for things like line item markups and dollar markups, which I can apply on an individual area to cover the cost of maybe labor burden. Like I've got a classification labor here, so I know that maybe I want to increase the cost of each of my labor items to cover insurance and workman's comp and things like that. There might be other costs that we apply to materials to cover the cost of freight or transport for those materials, delivery fees perhaps. Subcontractors might have additional costs that we apply as well. And if you click into the dollar markup column, it gives you the option to switch back and forth between an individual line item markup, just in case you would like to increase this by a specific percentage, or hopping into the classification markup where you can set some of these defaults. From here, you've got this easy option to come into and say, I want to mark up all material by, like I said here, 25%, or maybe we can adjust it to be 20%. We could adjust the cost of all labor by maybe 40% to cover the cost of our burden, and so on. And all of this will now apply throughout the entire estimate for anything marked with that classification. From here, as I mentioned, we can always click into the line item markup section and maybe adjust the percentages a little bit more, just in case you need to cover a unique scenario. But by and large, most of this information is going to be easily adjusted either by clicking into the dollar markup, or if you come up to the estimating tab, you can even click into the set classification markups option here to adjust those a little bit further. Now, right next to this, you guys will see an option to set sales tax. And this is going to be a great tool for you guys to use as you're going through to take into account things like your state taxes or service taxes, if those happen to be different from your area. And depending on your area, like if you guys are working in Arizona or New Mexico, maybe they have additional decimal places that are required. So you can always expand that out as well to get those covered also. Now you'll see that this actually opens up the tax type and sales tax columns as well, just like with the line item markup columns. This is some additional information that's going to impact the overall price for what you're working on. And once again, that total price is going to be the contract value that we're going to be charging our client on. So you can see where the calculations come all the way across to give us our total price, which calculates all the way down to give us our total for the category as a whole. These prices or these numbers are also going to be coming over to impact the project total as well, and you'll actually see that coming into play as we go through the estimate summary table here as well. And once again, most of it is just based off of the selections and the quantities and costs that you enter into the estimate itself. If you would like to open up all the columns and see how they function, you can always right-click and show hide columns to check off each individual one. But we also give you a couple of handy little quick access buttons down here in the lower right-hand corner as well, where you can see things like the standard view, which turns on the most applicable columns, type for switching back and forth between estimates, allowances, options, method to switch between a lump sum, which is most commonly for things like subcontractor costs, or detailed for an itemized subcategory like this one. Then quantity, cost, unit, total price. There's also going to be an organizational view, which shows you a lot of detail about resources and the like. There is a financial view, which is going to show you things like estimated costs, actual costs, invoiced amounts, and committed costs, which become a little bit more important tomorrow as we're going through the QuickBooks integration. And the fourth button here is the advanced view, the show everything button, if you will. So if you click on this option, of course, it's going to pull open all, I think there's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 25 to 30 columns in here, somewhere in there. And you can actually see all of the detail for everything that we need in here, depending on what you guys would like to work on. I don't need that personally, so I'll switch back to my standard view. And you'll also see as we're going through here that since I've added in most of the information that I could need on this job, you can easily see where the items are necessary on this particular project, whereas some of them have no cost, and therefore I'm not using these line items. Now, standard view makes it a little easier to kind of navigate through and see what's used and what's not, but there's an easier option if you come up to the view menu to just hide everything that didn't end up getting used as we went through this estimate. And then all those $0 items are hidden from the estimate, and therefore from the reports that we generate and contracts that are drawn up. Even if you decide to generate a schedule from this estimate, most of those will be ignored as well. And that's under the view menu here where you can hide unused sections, and you'll see in this area you can also do things like turn on the column and row headers, just in case you like building formulas in here. Most of the formulas can be built the same way as you might in Excel, and the column headers and the row headers help out with that pretty substantially. You'll also be able to undo the hide option, just in case you wanted to go through and set up any change orders or anything like that in here as well, and so on. Now, some of the other menu items that we have up here to help out, obviously under the File menu, this is where you guys would be taking a look at saving your files, opening up new estimates perhaps, doing a save as in case you'd like to take this estimate and drop it into a new project. You'll also see, for those of you using the Premier or Catalyst versions of ConstructionSuite and above, some options to integrate with various different CAD programs or takeoff tools like eTakeoff, PlanSwift, Chief Architect, or AutoCAD Revit. Are all options here for you to import the materials lists from those other programs. And as we'll explore on Thursday, there's some options to create and sync schedule details with your estimates as well from here. Under the Edit menu, just like with the right-click menu, this is going to include a lot of options for creating or deleting category sheets, organizing the information by moving up and down and indenting and outdenting items. View, as we just took a look at, is great for hiding all the unused sections or putting on or off the row and column headers. Insert menu again, a couple of similar options to the right-click menu to add in new items and the like. Tools is going to be great for updating some of the details for your project or for your schedules from here. Again, estimating, there's our classification markups, sales tax, things like that. One of the other options, though, that you'll see across a couple of these different sections is an items database. Now, most of the items that I have in this estimate, I have manually entered in the names of the items. Like under foundation materials, for example, I know I will need mortar, so I've added that in. I know I only need sand and reinforcing steel and so on and so forth. And you can always just click the Add Item link here to add in a new item. But you can instead open up the items database and actually pull from a full catalog of items in here as well. Now, all of you who are using ConstructionSuite right now should have access to RS Means cost books. If you expand out this section to take a look at the different cost books that are available, you'll see in here, and in the very least, a default RS Means cost books for the residential users, or commercial for the commercial users. But for any of you who have active total care, you'll actually see in here, on the residential side, you'll have at least the residential and repair remodeling cost books in both the 16 and 50 division, so there's 4 cost books there. As you move over to the commercial side, you'll start to include things like the light commercial, BCCD, and the commercial cost book with assemblies as well, once you get up to the Catalyst version. These additional cost books are going to have a large collection of items that RS Means, which is a North American pricing company, RS Means has gathered up thousands and thousands of items together, organized them into the cost books according to the CSI 16 and 50 divisions, and they provide to you costs based on North American averages. So you'll see a lot of the pricing information that they've gathered together for you here, and you can adjust this with a regional multiplier, either your zip code if you're in the United States, or for those Canadian users, you could always apply a Canadian multiplier, which is the closest large city that you're working out of. And this multiplier is designed to affect the national average based on cost fluctuations in your area. So if you're working in an area where materials are inexpensive and labor is easy to find, most of these prices will go down based on the selection that you've made. If you're working in an area where labor is kind of scarce, or maybe there's a high demand for it, labor costs or labor quotes will go up. Material costs, of course, will go up as well. We've seen this most commonly with some of the people that live out in like Hawaii, for example. The cost to get everything delivered out there is astronomical, so the price goes up pretty high from RS Means. If you'd like a description of how they come to these costs, you can always expand these out as well and take a look at the individual quotes that they're gathering up for these. Or you can right-click on any of the items and edit the RS Means item to take a look at the notes that have come through as well. The notes might include things like for this 1x2 pine trim, the estimated labor, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that they're estimating a single carpenter getting paid with overhead and profit about $47 an hour there. But they're estimating that a carpenter should be able to install 330 units in a single day, or that it would take 0.025 man-hours to install a single unit of this. Now, if you go through and do the updates for the cost book, you'll find that the units for most of the pine trim are probably going to be linear feet. And with that being the case, 330 linear feet is fairly reasonable for a carpenter, and that's where they're getting that pricing information from. Now, of course, this is based on averages, so it doesn't take into account how amazingly fast your carpenters are, or how skilled they are maybe, or if you guys are one of the few that has a bit of a dud, or maybe a new employee perhaps, maybe he's a little bit slower. So there's always going to be a little bit of other things that you'll need to take into account when you're adjusting these prices, but you can adjust the prices, and you can do it easily just by adding in your own quotes as well. For the materials, maybe you've got a lumber supplier who gives you really great rates, and you can come in here and put in their costs as well. And then you can have a couple of these things going side by side so that you can adjust your pricing and everything from there. This is tremendously useful as well as you get into and start creating your own cost books. When you create your own cost book, you can even import your own spreadsheets into the system to create the cost book, or more importantly, you can export it back into an Excel spreadsheet so that you can send it off to your suppliers, get them to update their own prices, import it back again, and it just updates all of your information here in this entire database. Now, when I say the database itself, I'm referring to the cost books that you see here. The estimates don't typically update their individual prices until you select this option to refresh all item costs. What this does is it takes this estimate and it checks to see if any of these items are part of a cost book, and then it checks the price here. I'm pointing at the screen now as if you could see it, but it checks the cost to make sure that this is the correct cost from that cost book. So if we go through and do a battery of updates to our cost book, and then we refresh all item costs, then the pricing information throughout this entire estimate is going to update accordingly. So that's a quick and easy way to start to get all of the information together. If you guys use cost books, you've got one location where you can do all of the updates to the prices. You don't have to hop between estimates and all of these things. Try to remember which ones you guys have updated and which ones you haven't. Just use those items from the database and you'll be able to work well from there. Now, of course, some of you are looking at this estimate and you might be thinking, this is extremely detailed. Maybe you've got items all over the place. We've got categories and subcategories spread throughout the estimate and lots of information in here, which might not be easy to convey to your clients. But this is where reporting comes in and why it's so immensely powerful. When we come over to the reporting tab, all of the different reports that we have on this tab are going to take the information from the estimate and it's going to put it into a manageable or useful format. For example, under project management, we've got tools in here to just give you a summary report of everything that we're working on. There's some additional tools in here to do things like budgeting, estimate versus actuals. You can pull out all of your classifications if you want to do a labor report for this project. That's pretty easy to do. Under the vendor reports drop-down menu, we've got things like the ability to generate a materials list or a bill of materials. You could generate purchase orders from here, subcontractor contracts. You could even generate a bid package from here as well in the request for quote segment. Under the customer reports, most of these reports are going to be great tools for all of the projects that you have underway, like change order contracts that you can generate here or do a summary report if you'd rather. Create an allowance report so that you can print it off and hand it off to your clients and tell them to go have fun shopping for new things for their house or for their office space, whatever it might be. But typically, the standard workflow for ConstructionSuite would be create the project, draw up the estimate, and then step into the proposal. So let's open up the proposal wizard for a moment because there's a lot of great options here in the proposal wizard for you to take a look through as well. So to start with, I asked earlier how what kind of construction everybody does. And it looked like we actually had a pretty solid mix of residential and commercial contractors. Most of us today look like we're actually just general contractors. But as you're going through this process, even for those of you who do a little bit of both, you'll be able to select which style of template you want to use. If you want to use a commercial template or a residential template, you can pick that here. Then, of course, we'll verify the details on this next page. Let's go ahead and select Alice Gorey as my client. And here you can actually go through and start to select what style of proposal template you want to use on this particular job. Now, from here, you'll be able to go through and see some of the information on this little preview panel that they have here on how it's laid out for the default templates. On this default template, for example, we've got most of the information just kind of falling down the page like so, as opposed to the templates over here on the right where it's all in a table organized with the individual cells for the different pieces of information. And as you go through and make adjustments to this, where you can add the templates right here, you can also label them a little bit just in case you wanted to make it extremely clear to any of the other users which one they should pick. You can see that one member of my team has been putting together these templates where they selected or they decided to call this the "Hey team, pick this one." And I'm not going to say it was me, but I knew what it said. But as you go through and do these kind of labels, you can easily outline it like this so that people know exactly where they need to go or what they're going to be using and so on. Anyway, let's go ahead and move through. A lot of the information that you see in the general scope of work and special conditions, this is all part of the setup that was done yesterday in our overview webinar. If any of the information is put in here, you'll actually see it carrying into the proposal that we're generating. Same for the base price details. These are the dimensions or the description of the job itself that you could populate and include in case you need those extra talking points. But the real meat of the proposal itself comes here on this proposal or on the project totals report that we embed within this. From here, you'll actually see some of the information that we can include for items that are being sent into the estimate. If you want to include those items, you can put them in here. You can keep it a little bit more cursory if you'd rather and not include those items. We can do things as marked as option, estimate, items with no estimated value, which of course by default I like to ignore. But you'll also see some options in here for including the pricing details in the proposal if you'd like. There's an area where you can use the notes and have those show up in here as well. We can even take a company overhead margin category, which we have in the estimates themselves. This is where you would typically put in a percentage for your profit, perhaps, or something like that. And rather than getting into the conversation with the client about how much we're going to charge them for the job, we can use this prorate option to just spread it over proportionally throughout the entire proposal. And then the client never has to see this one big dollar amount, which in my case, it looks like it's $112,000 on this job. If I don't want to have that discussion with the client, I'll just prorate it across everything else, and all of my line items have that cost built in. It's just part and parcel. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and select Finish, and then we will have our proposal available in OnPoint. Now, as you guys are taking a look at this proposal that I've generated is again, one of our stock proposals, so I highly advise you go through and make a couple of adjustments to the template so that you get all the information that you need from there as well. This is going to include things like your own imagery, your own custom letterhead perhaps that you guys might want to add into the template, your own verbiage. You'll see that throughout the document itself. Let's bring this up a little bit so that I can get the format that I like. And you'll also see in here, though, where there's a lot of blue text, which represents, in this case, a lot of automatically populating fields in the system as well. These AutoDoc fields are going to be included for information regarding the date that I want to use. It could be client information on the job, my company details, you'll see those here, project details. And then we start to get down into the nitty-gritty details for the estimate itself. This is where we've got a total base price and that project total section where I decided to include my notes and my subcategorized breakdown of costs. Now, once again, everything that I'm looking at here is all based on the selections that we made through the proposal wizard. If you would like to step through and find the best set that works for you, by all means, generate a couple. See which ones you like, see what kind of options work best. And as you scroll down to the bottom, you will then see the area where not only you can sign off on this one, but your clients can as well. There's a little section here for an acceptance of agreement. So put this information together if you'd like, how you want to see it as your company, because the proposals do represent you as a company, and you want to make sure that they look good and everything like that. So along those lines, as you're going through this, you'll realize that the OnPoint system is designed to be pretty similar to programs like Microsoft Word. So if you wanted to include some additional verbiage, you can just type information in however you like. And you can set it up to include whatever kind of information that you'd like. You can even copy and paste from other systems if you want. You can come up to the File menu and actually import documentation or details from elsewhere as well. Things like if you've got a previous proposal template that you have used and it's a Word document, you could just open up the template for ConstructionSuite's proposal and just import that whole document. We can do the same thing for PDFs that you might want to use, for text files, and we can export into similar formats as well, just in case you want to send it off to a sales agent, for example, and let them adjust the numbers a little bit before they pitch it to the client. Now also, one of the things that you'll see in the system as well are going to be things like options to save these into various locations, just like before in the File menu. This is going to be some great options here. The Save to ConstructionOnline option is going to be available at this point also, which is going to be a nice way for you to push it to ConstructionOnline and start to share it with your clients or the PMs if you guys want to get them involved, or again the sales reps. There's an easy way to share the information out from there. And we'll kind of explore those options a little bit more on Friday, so stick with us for that one as well. But as we move across the top here, you'll also see under the Insert menu some of those standard options for putting in headers and footers, inserting pictures or page breaks, anything like that that you guys would like. The Table option is going to be an easy way to insert and then organize data into tables, if you guys like working with tables in there as well. Under the page layout section, you'll have some great options in here to do things like take all of those the blue fields that we were looking at up at the top and convert them into black text before you send it out to your client. Oh, let's jump back up there. There you go. Now we have black text instead of blue. You'll also be able to do things like if you realize that you've grabbed the wrong client from here, you can just open up the document wizard and go through and select the correct client instead, just in case you need to do some updates. And from here, you'll also be able to do simple things like sign off on the document and then email it out as an attachment. Now this is going to be sending it out from your system in ConstructionSuite, so anything that you send in here will go out directly as a PDF. And of course, you can put in your signature line, and you can put in, you can put in your subject line and your body, and then you can insert the signature line as you'd like. We also include an option here to BCC yourself, just so that you can keep a copy of this in your Outlook company file if you need anything like that in place. From here, of course, as I mentioned, we've got the proposal as an attachment over here, and it's a PDF over on the right side. We can also add additional attachments too, which could be internal documents, other reports maybe that we've generated in ConstructionSuite, or external as well, like the plans that we're going to be sending out to the client for their review also. Even if it's just a brief little SketchUp, these are things that you can include pretty easily. And then you can just browse for the file that you want to include, and off you go. From here, we already talked about the attachments. All you have to do is send off the email, and out she goes. So great options to get the information out from here. And then, of course, as we move out a little bit further from here, View menu just has a couple of different reading and organizational options. Tools is a great place to go to generate, again, the email attachment. We've got some other documents that might go along with this, like if you guys wanted to include a transmittal document or an envelope that you could print out to mail off the proposal or something like that, you can do all of these as well. And under the ConstructionSuite tab, there's also an option here to save it to ConstructionOnline directly. So much like before, we've got some editing options, we've got some generating, estimating, and schedule, and then pushing it out from here to ConstructionOnline. So, of course, this is just for the proposal itself. We've got all of the information in here for my proposal. From here, we can save it, email it, whatever we need to do. And assuming that the client likes this and they decide to go ahead and proceed, next step would typically be to draw up the contract. Now, if we come back to ConstructionSuite, and you take a look over on the left panel again for the navigation, there's an area here where you can take a look at contracts and docs. And depending on which version of ConstructionSuite that you have, there's going to be plenty of different documents in here for you to make use of. Those of you who have the Builder-Remodeler version on the residential side or Light on the commercial side, you should have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 140 contract and document templates that you can navigate through and take a look at from here, including fixed cost contracts, cost plus. We've got additional conditions and addenda like mold disclosure forms and lend paint agreements, draw request and lien release forms. They're all going to be in there. As you step up to Pro on the residential side or Contractor on the commercial side, we also include a full set of about 65 subcontractor contracts and documents in here. So we're moving up into the actually, I think it steps up into 176 from there, so the numbers might be off a little bit, for which I apologize, but you can always check with us to figure out exactly what it is. As we move up to the corporate and developer version, though, we also throw in the personnel management, property management, and developer tools as well. So we're over 200 at this point with all the different documents and contracts that are going to be available in here, templates, lease agreements for property management tools. Under the personnel management, we've got human resources and employment manuals and things like that. So plenty of different tools at your disposal now for a more successful implementation with your company. And the nice thing about this is every single one of these, all depending on which version you have, it could be anywhere from 140 to 210, I think, different contracts and documents that are all completely customizable. If you'd like to get into and right-click on any of these, you can edit the templates and make whatever changes that you'd like, insert whatever additional verbiage or anything like that you need to, and again, customize these to make them a part of your company rather than just being this part of this tool that you guys are forced to work with. So customize everything. I highly recommend it. This, of course, is going to be generating your contracts and everything like that. Assuming that we get this contract, sign off on this job, everybody's happy, we've got some work to do, we're going to make a ton of money, in this case $112,000 on this project. But as typically comes up with most of these jobs, there will always be change orders. And as the change orders do come up, the easy way to take these into account is to open up your estimate and go to the area where we're going to be inserting those change orders and inserting the detail for the change order itself. So let's say in this case that the client has decided that they want to change some of the tile flooring from here. So what we can do in this case to keep it relatively easy is I'm just going to go ahead and create a copy of the tile flooring materials, and we'll paste them in here so that I have an exact duplicate. This will become important as you're starting to work with QuickBooks, which we'll kind of cover tomorrow. But as you set up this change order now, you're setting up the details for the subcategories associated with the change order, and from here you can go through and keep the name but adjust the prices a little bit to reflect from that change order. So if we've got an upgraded cost from the tile, maybe it's an extra $1.50 per tile or per square foot, or however we've priced out the information. If none of the rest of these prices are going to be affected, and then we can leave them as such. And the important part here is that now that we have this estimate information in here for the change order, we need to switch it to a change order. And this opens up the change order wizard. The change order wizard is an excellent and extremely easy way for you to go through and create change orders or tie in existing components to these change orders as well. To start with, this is a brand new change order, so I'm going to be using the create new change order option here. The second option becomes available when we have change orders, so that you can take a piece from tile flooring, for example, and put it in with the same change order as something that might be showing up under cabinetry and countertops, and another piece of the same change order which might be going into plumbing systems, and so on. So as you start to put all these pieces together, the easy option is just to add to an existing change order to literally link them all together. Again, have to start somewhere, and let's go ahead and create that change order first. And this is the area where you can go into and start adding a little bit of flavor to the change order itself, starting with the name. You can also add a description here as well. Maybe we went from client upgraded. Again, there's all that wonderful spelling. Client upgraded from standard tile to stone tile. Something like that. You can put in all the flavor that you'd like for the descriptions on these change orders here. I always recommend starting them off as pending until you get a signed contract for those change orders. You always want to leave it as a pending change order and not start work on it before the client says so. But then we can just verify the location for the change order, and in my case, I've already got the details for it laid out in the subcategory, so I'm just going to convert that subcategory over. And there we go. So now we've got a $785 change order. And if you expand out the change order section, you can see that tile upgrade here. So let's go ahead and save it and commit it into the database. And there we go. Now, as I mentioned, once we get the change order details together, this is typically when you come up to the customer report, generate one of those change order contracts for it. And depending on the style of work that you do, this is going to be available for a fixed fee contract or a cost plus contract. So you'll see those options in here as well, where you can also edit those templates just in case you want to do a little bit of work on them. But when you generate these contracts, it gives you a lot of really useful information for both you and your client to do things like track what your original contract value was. If the contract has been revised prior to this particular change order contract, basically if we're looking at change order number 10 and the client has already accepted 1 through 9, obviously the revised contract value will be higher as a result. Then we've got the cost for this contract and the new contract total, assuming that they sign off on this contract or on this change order. So from here you can then go in and put in updates for the number of days that it's going to take for this particular change order and a new end date and things like that. And then this, once again, can be emailed out as a PDF and sent off to the client. Now, once again, I always recommend getting that signed contract out, no matter what size this change order is, unless you're okay paying for it out of pocket. Having the change orders, of course, makes it substantially easier, just in case the client questions anything that happened, or if you happen to be working with a team of investors, perhaps, and one investor gave the go-ahead, but the others don't know about it. If you can present a signed contract, it usually resolves any kind of questions or concerns, and it also kind of covers you guys a little bit better as well. Once you get that signed contract back, accepting the change order is just as easy as coming over into the estimate again and flipping the status from pending to accepted. There you go. Now, of course, this is one of the pieces that does prep you for integration with QuickBooks as well. As you can see, now that we've marked it as accepted, ConstructionSuite is giving us the option to send this change order over to QuickBooks. This is going to primarily conclude everything that we've got for you today in the estimating and reporting webinar. We've covered a number of things like setting up estimate templates, working with a lot of the reports, setting up estimates within projects, and then, of course, adjusting them with change orders as you go. At this point, I'd like to thank all of you for joining me today. I will be sticking around to answer a few additional questions for anything that might come up. But at this point, again, it's been great having you all with me today, and I look forward to working with all of you again in the future. So once again, this is Ian with UDA Technologies, and I hope you all have a great night.